Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Peter Rosenberg here with one of the best pound-for-pound MMA fighters on the planet, my man TJ Dillashaw. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
January 17th, Dominic Cruz, TD Garden in Boston.
Yep.
You'll have the opportunity to let your fighting do the talking.
Exactly.
Now, let's get right into it, because, I mean, there's been like a war of words or no words, depending how you look at it and how you ask. You're up against a guy who over the last few years has done more talking than fighting.
Exactly.
And he seems clearly like he's committed to baiting you into saying something that could play yourself, and you seem to refuse to take this bait.
That he's just trying to be relevant, you know what I mean? He hasn't fought in the last 4 years. He's fought once, and I feel like he's been on the sidelines and trying to make himself relevant. The only way he's been able to do that is by talking, you know, and he's just kind of talking about nothing, you know. It's like, I don't mind talking about the fight. I don't mind talking about how I'm better than you in fighting, and he just wants to get into the bickering matches and be, you know, 8th grade high school girl drama kind of deal, you know, and I'm just not into it.
Now, do you find that you perform better when you allow yourself to keep it professional and not go to an emotional place? Some people, you know, really get a lot of energy and focus out of that, and some people do much better just keeping it about the sport and performing and discipline.
Yeah, mine's more about having fun, you know. I mean, I get to do the job I love to do every day of my life, you know, and so I need to walk into the octagon having a smile on my face and kind of almost ready to show off, if that makes sense, you know. Like, I got all these eyes on me, the lights on me, and it's time just to flip that switch and kind of show off and show everyone how hard I've been working. Why
do you love this job? I find this job insane. It never changes to me. Like, yeah. It's like I'm very into pro wrestling, and I was like, well, pro wrestling to me makes sense because you want to perform and you want to do physical stuff, but like, you don't actually really want to fight. Wanting to actually fight is a totally different operation altogether. How did you fall in love with it, and what is it that you love about it so much?
I don't know, man. I think I was just bred to do it. You know, my family's real aggressive and real competitive. I was just kind of raised that way, and fell in love with wrestling at a young age. My dad got me in wrestling, and it was just kind of like the next step of competing for me. You know, wrestling doesn't have a competitive professional sport, you know. I mean, they do have the WWE, you know, but it's not real, you know. And if I wanted to continue my wrestling career, I'd have to go to the Olympics. And fighting just seemed a little bit more for me. I just fell in love with striking. I don't know, man. It's just something. You're so nervous and you get so pumped up for the fight that the rush afterwards and during is just unreal. You can't really even explain just how alive you feel after the fight or even during it, you know.
In that sense, is it a little bit more like something like skydiving than people would even give it credit for? Because it does have to be that. No matter who you are, no matter how tough you are, yeah. You can go back and watch I mean, even though it's boxing, what's the closest thing, right? You go back and watch a Tyson fight at his most dominant, yeah. And you can still see the nerves in him before you're having a competitive. Even when you're like, dude, he was about to fight some schlub. Well, you know, it's Peter McNeely. What was he worried about? You'd still see that. So is there? I've never heard someone describe it as that sort of just being about the rush. You must really feel alive. Yeah, when you're doing it.
And it's also the nerves of like performing, you know. I mean, I guess I'd imagine any performer, anybody has to step in front of a lot of people, it's just the nerves of performing in front of all those people and this name you've built yourself. And then also, you're going against another grown man. I don't care if he's an underdog, you know, you're going against another grown man that's trying to knock your head off. And it's just, that's, you know, it's a nerve-wracking feeling. And knowing that you want to perform better and to prove that you're the better fighter and everything you've been doing is the right way.
What's the most painful thing that you experience in the octagon? Like, we're watching and we're seeing a variety of things happen, right? Like, mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hard to tell because how incredible you guys are and the discipline that you have. It's not like every time something happens, you're like, ah, you know, and like wincing in pain. So, what is something that on a regular basis it stings pretty good whenever it happens?
During a fight, you got so much adrenaline, you don't really feel much of it, you know. I think it's like later that night or the next day when you start feeling it the most. And it's always seems like the leg kicks that linger, you know, like you're just getting kicked in the leg over and over again. It's like getting hit with a baseball bat, just right, and you're getting a dead leg over and over again. And that's something you limp around with for, you know, a week after your fight. I'd say during the fight, something that's going to be the most painful is something that feels a body shot, getting punched in the liver, kind of like almost paralyzes you to where you can't fight, you know, and that's why it's always kind of satisfying to finish a fight that way too, because the guy's like conscious but also giving up at the same time.
You know, the last big card, the McGregor fight, on the undercard, our guy Chris Weidman from Long Island was on the card.
Yeah.
And the end of that fight, you know, by all accounts, pretty much, no matter how you feel about it, was a brutal ending.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I sort of felt for the referee because it hovered in this in-between land of like, you have to stop that or not.
Yeah.
And you could have stopped it earlier. You also could have done what he did. I didn't blame the ref, even though I was around some people who were really like, it was one of those moments where they were covering their eyes a bit.
Yeah.
As a fighter, A, what was your perspective on that? And B, do you ever have moments when, if it's not your fight, you're kind of like, oh, this is a lot?
It's funny. I kind of actually went through those mixed emotions in the stands. I was instead of watching it, and I was sitting next to Verdum. I was like, oh man, they should stop the fight. Like, I feel like they should have stopped at the end of the round before. He's like, hey, you champion. He's like, would you want them to stop the fight? You know, if you were fighting, would you want them to stop it? And no, I wouldn't. You know, I wouldn't want it to go out that way. I'd want it to continue to fight. I'd want to go until it was my choice, you know. So being a competitor, you got to understand that, yeah, I would have kept letting it go, and I would have said, okay, I'm all right. As a fan, it's tough to see someone get beat on like that, you know. So you got to go through those little teeter-totter.
What's the line for you, though? Is it more about returning, you know, still being able to return fire? Or is it about, like, because Chris, for example, who's a good guy and he's been here before, and I was bummed out to see it, and he'll be fine again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he'll compete and do well, I'm sure. But it seems like just covering up to me isn't enough. Like, it does seem like you want to see that they're showing the ability to return punches.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are you really doing? And also, on the other end of that, is it hard for you when you're in a situation where you're beating the hell out of someone and you're waiting for the ref to stop it? You listen, as much as savage as it may appear,
yeah,
a lot of you guys, most that I've met, are just good guys who at this point in their life are not violent in real life or anything like that. So you obviously don't want to hurt anyone past the point you need to. That's got to be an awkward situation professionally where you want to seal the fight, but you're like, I can tell this guy's in bad shape.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the fine line for me is that, you know, if you're effectively defending yourself, sure, that's cool. I mean, let it keep going. You know, even if he's landing punches over punches and you're trying to block him, and it doesn't look like there's much damage being made, even though it's him throwing strikes, you're not throwing nothing back. As long as you're blocking, you know, as long as you're blocking it, you don't look like too much punishment's going on. Let it keep going. You know, I think some of those fights get stopped too soon. But if you can see that there's physical harm being done to this guy's well-being outside the octagon, like you can tell he's gonna be, you know, maybe being a little punch drunk from this or getting hit too many times, yeah, stop the fight.
Have you ever had a moment when you held up a little bit yourself and you like kind of look? There are moments when people will look at the ref and kind of be like, "Are you going to end this or not?"
I've never had that. I guess I'm just too much of an aggressive guy and really want to win that bad that I don't really care. You know, I mean, I would never want to hurt anybody ever on the street. I would never get in, I guess me, like I never want to ever get into a street fight. You know, something that's so uncontrolled, and I'd never want to hurt someone like that. But as soon as you lock that cage and you put me in there and we're going for getting a payday and hold on to that belt, I'm not stopping.
You're not stopping until they tell you to stop.
Oh yeah, I'm not stopping. There's no way.
So when you were a kid, where did you grow up, by the way, TJ?
I grew up in Angels Camp, California, small town, about an hour and a half out of Sacramento.
And did from an early age, did you realize that you were good at fighting, or was it more a situation? Sometimes people had an early loss in their life that made them want to compete. What was it for you? Do you have a specific memory that sort of led to the beginning of your love affair with fighting?
Mine was always wrestling. You know, I grew up wrestling. My dad got me into wrestling. Was good at wrestling. It took a lot of hard work for me to be a good wrestler, though. And I had an older brother and a younger brother, and so we fought all the time in the house. And my mom's a very aggressive woman, used to beat on me, you know, like for punishment-wise. I did something messed up, you know, not like I didn't deserve it. And it was just kind of one of those things that I feel like I was bred to be aggressive and to be a competitor. And so I enjoyed fighting. I remember going to Blockbuster and renting the UFCs back in the day and watching with my brother, but I never thought I'd be one of those crazy guys in the cage fighting, you know, and that didn't all come about until after I graduated college, until I felt like I wasn't done competing. I didn't reach my goals in wrestling. I wanted to be an All-American, I wanted to be a national champion, and that didn't happen. I came up short. And so I just felt like I wasn't done. That's all I did my entire life. I competed. I didn't really have a real job. I worked here and there and got a full ride scholarship through school, and that's the only thing I just really knew how to do. I knew I was good at it, so it was just the next step for me.
Do you have a memory of the first time you got into the cage and you're like, this is really happening?
Yeah, my first amateur fight, I was so nervous. It was ridiculous how nervous. I mean, more nervous I've ever been. More nervous for a title fight, more nervous than anything. It was, just knowing that there was like no turning back, that I agreed to fight someone inside the cage with small gloves, no shin guards on, and this wasn't practice. And I think that was kind of after that fight was like, all right, I could do this. It wasn't that bad.
Now, you're a small guy. You're bantamweight.
Yeah.
And what exactly? What's your weight limit there?
135. I have to weigh in at 135. Yeah.
Is that a natural weight for you? Is that an easy walk around weight, or you have to work hard for that?
I have to work hard for that. I walk around like 155.
Really?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. That's another part, discipline-wise, that I always find impossible. I mean, I've been sitting here desperately trying to lose like 10 pounds, and I just can't seem to do. No matter what I do, I'm like, I keep trying one different diet after another. When I know what I need to do is just simply be disciplined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, you have a lot of money on the line, which certainly helps. I'm sure, as motivation.
Yeah.
But as you approach now, like we're just 10 days away from less than 10 days away from the fight, less than a week from the fight. Yeah. What do you do? And what's your eating regimen like on a week like this before a big fight?
I mean, shoot, even before there was big money in fighting, I mean, I did wrestling every weekend. It's like a 9-month long season, and you're making weight every other weekend or every weekend, during the week. And that's when it was tough, and it definitely comes down to dedication and just kind of the will to want to be the best. For me, luckily, I mean, I'm telling you, weigh 155. That's actually not too big. I don't cut too much weight. For a lot of fighters, they'll cut more than that. And when it comes down to it, the last week, it's just cutting a bunch of water weight. So the weight that I'm losing this next week is weight that I'll put right back on before I fight. I should walk into the cage weighing 152, even though the night before I weighed in at 135. Just rehydrate myself and eat the right things before I step back in. But my diet has just changed. It's more of a life thing now. It's not just a diet, It's something I just kind of eat healthy all the time because I know it's going to help me perform. It's going to help me like be in better shape.
So what's an average day like meal-wise for you?
I actually have to eat a lot for how much I work out. I eat a ton of calories. It's hopefully around 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day, just because how much I'm working. I'm working out 3 times a day in camp. So I actually have to try hard to hold on to my weight and to keep the weight on. You're eating clean. You're eating a lot of fish. You're eating, the quinoas and the brown rice and vegetables. I guess the thing I've changed the most out of anything is how much greens I take in. I eat a lot of greens. It helps me just keep lean.
What's your green of choice?
I blend everything up. I was telling my wife I'd rather drink my greens than eat them. I mean, it's not like I really sit down and enjoy like a giant salad. I mean, I'll eat them, but I'd rather blend it all up.
Just get it down.
Yeah, I have a ninja that I'll blend up like, kale, spinach, celery, cucumbers, everything you can think of that's good for you. Just throw it in there, add a little protein in there, it tastes good. And just,
so you add, as I was going to say, it's like a little chocolate protein or something to give a little flavor.
Yeah, some pineapples, some sort of fruit to make it a little bit sweeter, and then just kind of down it,
And then what about, so this last week when you do lose the water weight,
yeah,
I understand it in theory, but is it the day before? Is it just a matter of sweating and not eating for that one day?
That day's tough. I mean, I'll eat good this whole week, and I'll drink a lot of water as well. I'm just continuing to work out as well. That'll help me like sweat off the water weight. And then the last day, I'm losing like 7 pounds the day of weigh-ins, and that's just all just sweating and not eating or drinking anything. You just don't drink anything the last day of weigh-ins.
Good solid meal post weigh-in?
Oh yeah.
Always enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
Some carbs.
Like once you get close enough to the fight, you don't even think about that. Like right now, I'm doing nothing but thinking about my fight. Like every day going into training, I'm thinking about my fight. When you get down to a couple of days before weigh-ins, you're not thinking about the fight anymore. You're thinking about making weight, worry about the fight later. So that night's always super enjoyable. It's almost like you won the fight. You weighed in.
I was gonna say, that must be an interesting experience because in one sense you're celebrating one piece of it, but then the biggest part of it's the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're going out, you're having a good time with your family, you're eating an awesome meal. There's always that post weigh-in meal that you have right away because you can't wait. You've been waiting already too long enough to eat. So it's a crazy big bag of mixed emotions you're going through.
So the 17th, which is this Saturday night,
Sunday,
this Sunday night,
right after the playoffs.
Oh, perfect. So
Yeah.
the second football ends on Sunday night, TD Garden in Boston. You have the fight against Cruz. What do you think about I obviously don't want to give away too much in strategy, but it's kind of weird with a guy who's only fought once in the last 4 years. You can't map it necessarily the same way you would with a guy who's fighting once or twice a year. What do you think strategy was?
You got to be prepared for anything to come into it, with any kind of fighter. But he's got bad habits. He's had his entire career. You can see him his whole career. He's also got very good habits as well. He's a great fighter. There's definitely some holes in his game that I've noticed that I'm going to take advantage of, that I think I'm better at. My technique's just a little bit cleaner. I'm a lot more powerful of an athlete. I come into the fight to finish you. I'm more of an aggressive fighter when he's trying to point, fight, and run around. And I'm going to wear him out. I'm not going to let him get away with that. I think he's been able to get away with a lot of stationary opponents that stood right in front of him and fought him, but that's not me. I'm all over the place. I fight both stances, and I have a lot of movement. I'm faster than him, and like I said, I'm a little bit. I think people don't take into account is just how aggressive and angry of a fighter I am. That goes into winning fights.
All right, well, it goes down this Sunday night. We wish you the best of luck, man. I know he's talked a lot. You're probably eager to get this thing underway. Would you say because of the talk, it's gotten to a point of real dislike or disdain, or do you not really take it that seriously? And when we see it all said and done, you're still probably going to hug this guy and not really care that much.
I still got respect for the guy. He's a great fighter, and I'm a martial artist. I'm always going to have respect for everyone I fight. And I know it's a little bit of him selling the fight and hyping it up and trying to be relevant, like I said. And so there's no super ill will about it. Do I agree with what he's doing and do I like it? No, I don't. So he's the one that's got to step into that cage and back up all those words he's been talking. And I'm going to make him look like a fool. TJ
Dillashaw, the best bantamweight in the world, he'll take on Dominic Cruz this Sunday night in Boston. Thanks for coming by, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.